So we're going to move on to another prose work. Before moving to Donne's poetry, I wanted to briefly look at some of his prose. He's written all sorts of prose that are worth reading. He's written elegies and satires and published sermons as well, of course. This work, The Anniversary, he's written two. There's the first and then there's the second anniversary. It was written in 1611, considered one of his most complicated and greatest works. Donne was a famous figure in his day. Was the the Dean of St. Paul's, the most prominent churches in London. Astonishingly well educated. I'll say more about Donne when, by way of biography next time. I don't want to take that time here right now because I want to get to the first anniversary. But he is very much of a Renaissance man. He was a Catholic at birth and converted to Anglicanism, and the terms of and conditions of that are famous as well. I'll say more about that next time. But First Anniversary is a very interesting work insofar as it takes the death of a young woman as the pretext for writing about bigger things. So let me see here in the notes here. I think I skipped over that. As the meditation on not just a person dying, but the world, the idea of the loss of a person having a cosmological effect. So that's the basic premise of the First Anniversary, is that the death of this young woman, Elizabeth Drury, is of such moment that it's like the world ending, which is very dramatic and experientially can also be true. Some people are so important to a person that when they die, you're devastated. Your world's, I've lost my whole world. You'll hear spouses speak that way of their, or parents with their children, or children with their parents sometimes. And that's how Donne speaks of Elizabeth Drury. Now, who she is in relation to him is not nearly as close as you might think. And so then she becomes more like a poetic, an opportunity to reflect on things poetically rather than the expression of the closeness of their relationship, in the same way that Milton in Lycidas will bemoan the loss of a university classmate in a shipwreck at sea. And it becomes this great lament, and the figure becomes bigger than they actually were in life. Same with Elizabeth Drury here, I think. So I'm going to read it, and then we'll go through it bit by bit. But it's structured in a very complex and intricate fashion. It's divided into 3 stanzas, each of which contain 9 lines, I think, at the outset. And then it will go on. Let me read it. It's really long. Does this one? No, this one doesn't have lines. Let me see if I can find another one that has line numbers on it. Because that would be rather helpful. Does this one have it? No, it doesn't. Oh, this is just the anniversary. No, I want the first anniversary. Is this the problem? Oh, no. That's why I hate online stuff. Maybe I should just go with what I had. First time I say it doesn't matter. No, this is just the 3-line stanza. I don't want that. Okay, well, I'll just have to go with this then. Anatomy of the World. Maybe I should look under the Anatomy of the World. Donne. anatomy. Now, you know what anatomy is. It's the subject of looking at a body part cut up into little bits, the human anatomy taken in the diverse parts. And there you go. Yeah, okay. But again, it doesn't give the line. Okay, so forget it. It's the same. The only addition this one has is the little bit. The occasion of the untimely death of Mistress Elizabeth Drury, the frailty and the decay of this whole world is represented. The first anniversary, it's been 1 year since her death. When that rich soul, which to her heaven is gone, whom all do celebrate, who know they have one, for who is sure he hath a soul, unless it see and judge and follow worthiness, and by deeds praise it? He who doth not this may lodge an inmate soul, but 'tis not his. When that queen ended here her progress time, and as to her standing house to heaven did climb, where loath to make the saints attend her long, she's now a part both of the choir and song. This world in that great earthquake languished, for in a common bath of tears it bled, which drew the strongest vital spirits out, but succored then with a perplexed doubt, whether the world did lose or gain in this, because since now no other way there is but goodness to see her, whom all would see, all must endeavor to be good as she. This great consumption to a fever turned, and so the world had fits, it joyed, it mourned, and as men think that agues physic are, and the ague being spent, give over care, so thou, sick world, mistakes thyself to be well, when alas, thou art in a lethargy. Her death did wound and tame thee then, and then thou mayest have better spared the son or man. That wound was deep, but 'tis more misery. It's not divided up here at all. This is not good. "'Twas heavy then to hear thy voice of moan, but this is worse, that thou art speechless grown. Thou hast forgot thy name, thou wast nothing but she, and her thou hast o'erpassed. For as a child kept from the font, until a prince, expected long, come to fulfill the ceremonies thou unnamed hadst laid, had not her coming thee her palace made, her name defined thee, gave thee form and frame, and thou forgetst to celebrate thy name. Some months she hath been dead, but being dead, measure of times are all determined, according to the death of Christ. But long she hath been away, long, long, yet none offers to tell us who it is that's gone. But as in states doubtful of future heirs, when sickness without remedy impairs the present prince, there loath it should be said, the prince doth languish, or the prince is dead. So mankind feeling now a general thaw, a strong example gone, equal to law, the cement which did faithfully compact and glue all virtues, now resolved and slacked, thought it some blasphemy to say she was dead, or that our weakness was discovered in that confession. Therefore spoke no more than tongues, the soul being gone, the loss deplore. But though it be too late to succor thee, sick world, yea dead, yea putrefied, since she, the intrinsic balm and thy preservative, can never be renewed, thou never live. I, since no man can make thee live, will try what we may gain by thy anatomy. Her death hath taught us dearly that thou art corrupt and mortal in thy purest part. So the death of Elizabeth Drury is teaching us something about the world. There's the microcosm, macrocosm analogy. The death of Elizabeth is being compared and contrasted, but specifically compared with with the death of the world, the mortality of time, the march of time. So it's a grand philosophical comparison with metaphysical import. Her death hath taught us dearly that thou art corrupt and mortal in thy purest part, because she died. Let no man say the world itself being dead, 'tis labor lost to have discovered the world's infirmities, since there is none alive to study this dissection. For there's a kind of world remaining still, though she which did inanimate and fill the world be gone, yet in this last long night her ghost doth walk, that is a glimmering light. A faint weak love of virtue and of good reflects from her on them which understood her worth. And though she have shut in all day, the twilight of her memory doth stay, which from the carcass of the old world free creates a new world, and new creatures be produced. The matter and the stuff of this, her virtue, and the form our practice is. And though to be thus alimented, arm these creatures from home-born intrinsic harm, for all assumed unto this dignity, so many weedless paradises be, which of themselves produce no venomous sin, except some foreign serpent bring it in, yet because outward storms the strongest break, and strength itself by confidence grows weak, this new world may be safer, being told the dangers and diseases of the old, and with due temper men do then forego or covet things, when they their true worth know. There is no health. Physicians say that we at best enjoy but a neutrality. And can there be worse sickness than to know that we are never well, nor can be so? We are born ruinous. Poor mothers cry that children come not right, nor orderly, except they headlong come and fall upon an ominous precipitation. How witty's ruin, how importunate upon mankind. It labored to frustrate even God's purpose, and made woman, sent for man's relief, cause of his languishment. They were to good ends, and they are so still, but accessory and principal in ill. For that first marriage was our funeral. One woman at one blow then killed us all, and singly, one by one, they kill us now. We do delightfully ourselves allow to that consumption, and profusely blind to, we kill ourselves to propagate our kind. Killing in Renaissance slang is fornication. Play on words. Kill ourselves to propagate our kind. And yet we do not that. We are not men. There is not now that mankind which was then, when as the sun and man did seem to strive, joint tenants of the world, who should survive, when stag and raven and the long-lived tree compared with man died in minority, when if a slow-paced star had stolen away from the observer's marking, he might stay 200 or 300 years to see it again, and then make up his observation plain. When, as the age was long, the size was great, man's growth confessed and recompensed the meat, so spacious and large that every soul did a fair kingdom and large realm control. And when the very stature thus erect did that good soul a good way towards heaven direct, where is this mankind now? Who lives to age, fit to be Methuselah, his page? Remember the longest lived man in the Bible, Methuselah, 800 odd years. Alas, we scarce live long enough to try whether a true-made clock run right or lie. Our old grandsires talk of yesterday with sorrow, and for our children we reserve tomorrow. So short is life, that every peasant strives in a torn house or field to have 3 lives. And as in lasting, so in length is man contracted to an inch, who was a span. For had a man at first in forests strayed, or shipwrecked in the sea, one would have laid a wager that an elephant or whale that met him would not hastily assail a thing so equal to him. Now, alas, the fairies and the pygmies well may pass as credible. Mankind decays so soon, we're scarce our father's shadows cast at noon. Only death adds to our length, nor are we grown in stature to be men, till we are none. But this were light, did our less volume hold all the old text, or had we changed to gold their silver, or disposed into less glass spirits of virtue, which then scattered was. But 'tis not so. We're not retired, but damped, and as our bodies, so our minds are cramped. 'Tis shrinking, not close weaving, that hath thus in mind and body both bedwarfed us. We seem ambitious, God's whole work to undo. Of nothing he made us, and we strive to bring ourselves to nothing back. And we do what we can to do it as so soon as he. With new diseases on ourselves we war, and with new physic, a worse engine far. Medicine harms us. Thus man, this world's vice emperor, in whom all faculties, all graces are at home, and if in other creature they appear, they're but man's ministers and legates there to work on their rebellions and reduce them to civility and to man's use. This man whom God did woo, and loath to attend till man came up, did down to man descend. This man so great that all that is his, oh, what a trifle and a poor thing he is. If man were anything, he's nothing now. Help, or at least some time to waste, allow this other wants. But when he did depart with her whom we lament, he lost his heart. She, of whom the ancients seemed to prophesy, when they called virtues by the name of she. She in whom virtue was so much refined, that for alloy unto so pure a mind, she took the weaker sex, that she that could drive the poisonous tincture and the stain of Eve out of her thoughts and deeds, and purify all by a true religious alchemy. She is dead. She's dead. When thou knowest this, thou knowest how trifling, poor a trifling thing man is, and learnst thus much by our anatomy. The heart being perished, no part can be free, and that except thou feed, not banquet, on the supernatural food, religion, thy better growth grows withered and scant. Be more than man, or thou art less than an ant. Then as mankind, so is the world's whole frame quite out of joint, almost created lame. For before God had made up all the rest, corruption entered and depraved the best. It seized the angels, and then first of all the world did in her cradle take a fall, and turned her brains, and took a general maim, wronging each joint of the universal frame. The noblest part, man, felt it first, and then both beasts and plants, cursed in the curse of man. So did the world from the first hour decay. That evening was the beginning of the day, and now the springs and summers which we see, like sons of women after 50 be. And new philosophy calls all in doubt. The element of fire is quite put out. The sun is lost, and the earth, and no man's wit can well direct him where to look for it, when he, and freely confess that this world's spent, when in the planets and the firmament they seek so many new. They see that this is crumbled out again to his atomies. 'Tis all in pieces, all coherence gone, all just supply and all relation. Prince, subject, father, son are things forgot. For every man alone thinks he hath got to be a phoenix, and that then can be none of that kind of which he is, but he. Like back to what Bacon just said about self-wisdom. This is the world's condition now, and now she that should all parts to reunion bow, She that had all magnetic force alone to draw and fasten sundered parts in one, she whom wise nature had invented then, when she observed that every sort of men did in their voyage in this world's sea stray, and needed a new compass for their way, she that was best and first original of all fair copies. A fair copy is a copy made of the original, like a fair copy of an original manuscript. And that's Elizabeth Drury. She was the best and first original of all fair copies, and the general steward to fate. She whose rich eyes and breast gilt the West Indies and perfumed the East. Whose having breathed in this world did bestow spice on those isles and bade them still smell so. And that rich India which doth gold inter is but a single money coined from her. She to whom this world must itself refer as suburbs or the microcosm of her, she's dead. She's dead. When thou knowest this, thou knowest how lame a cripple this world is. So it's a long poem. And it's an unbroken rhetorical flourish of lament, but also reflection on the significance of a human life in relation to the world. This will be the same poet, by the way, who will write that no man ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. No man's an island unto himself, says Dr. John Donne in one of his elegies. I think it's elegy 17. We're not going to look at that, but he has a sense of the value of a human life and how much of how great a value is a human life. It's a whole world is lost. I think when Jesus says that our souls are of greatest value, people discount how significant a human soul is worth. I think it's hyperbole on his part. Not sure it is. It's that we minimize it, and that's certainly not what Donne does here with Elizabeth Drury. He makes her into a microcosm of the whole world, but even inverts it, says that she's the great thing and it's the small thing comparatively. And I guess Jesus, that's reflecting the words of Jesus, profiteth man not a man that he gain the whole world, but lose his soul. Right? You can gain the whole world, but if you lose your soul in the process, you've lost the thing of greater value, the pearl of precious price. So that's the reflection here. It's a really hard work to teach because it is this long, unbroken train of thought. And I don't see it broken up into stanzas here. Let's see if I have it in my text here, whether it breaks it, but I'm not sure that it does. I think it just goes on. In fact, it's probably in the prose. That's why I don't have it here. It is in the prose. So from sermons, I don't think I'm going to have it. I'm not going to find any luck here. I'm quite sure it doesn't break down in a digestible portion. Now I'll just have to leave it with that. So it begins the opening gambit here, at any rate. The opening gambit is, and part of the themes of the poem, is the concept of space and time, specifically time. Remember, an anniversary is the celebration of a year after some momentous event, and the momentous event is the death of Elizabeth Drury. And Donne is exploring throughout this poem the idea of time as a healer and also as a destroyer, because it's both. God is our Savior, but note that he's also a destroyer. Strong emphasis in the Old Testament. He is the destroyer. He's not just the Savior. He's to us a Savior. That's the good news. But the Savior is also a destroyer. So the passing of the year since the death of Elizabeth Drury is the topic, or it's the occasion for a reflection on her life in relation to time and what time does and how we relate to time. And remember, we measure even our time in accordance with the life and death of Christ. We live in AD 2025, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. So time is punctuated by Christ's life and death. And the meaning of time is connected to life and death then. And in Christian understanding, time is also a significant feature of understanding of God, because God works in space and time. He has a beginning point for creation, and there's also ultimately an eschatological end to it, when there'll be a new heavens and a new earth. So it has a sense of linearity to it. It's not a cyclical sense of time the way the Greco-Roman worlds saw it. The golden age gives way to the silver and the bronze and the iron age, and then we'll come back to the golden age, as it were. That's the pagan way of looking at time. That's not the biblical sense of time. It's punctuated, has a purpose and a meaning, and it is going towards something. But the account is one of fall and degeneration and decay and death. It's not the only note, but it's a strong note. Out of that strong note of death, there's also the hopeful note of resurrection from the dead, defeat of death, and life in Christ and so forth. But this here in the anniversary is the idea of time as a destroyer as well as a healer. And a lot of the poem is spent on that theme of decay and loss. It's not a note we hear much about these days. Even in Christian circles, they don't want to reflect on this. I mean, funerals are now celebrations of life, which I always find cheap and dissatisfying. I don't feel helped by the celebration of life. I've come at the loss of someone who was important to me. That's how I got there. Otherwise, I wouldn't be there. That's what brings you to that point. And so the importance of a death in a person's life is de-emphasized. And the celebration of life, that person is with you no more. Celebrating their life is doing nothing to bring them back. Maybe that's what you do when you're a pagan. You have no choice but to celebrate a life, because you have no hope for what lies beyond the grave. But celebrations of life are the life they have in Christ, which perdures beyond the grave. But anyway, sign of a dying culture when it doesn't understand the meaning of death and life. So that's a key theme, decay and loss, in relation to time. Another is the idea of love and its enduring nature. It's a key theme here throughout the poem. So despite the passage of time, despite the fact of mortality, which comes because of the fall, Donne insists that love can remain constant and can even grow in strength. But that's not because of any mortal action, but rather the action of the immortal, the Lord of life. But it's a very complex poem written in rhyming couplets throughout. You'll have noticed that, which is really interesting. Right? Rhyming couplets throughout it, and this is 1611, long before the age when rhyming couplets were the dominant form, or at least to our understanding were the dominant form. But we can see it here. It reflects a sense of order. Rhyme is always a reflection of order, and I would say enchantment. Just like nursery rhyme, there's something enchanted about the world that Donne, while lamenting a sense of disenchantment, is still reinforcing by writing in rhyme and meter. You'll notice when I read it, I tried to keep with the meter. It was a little bit of lilt in my voice, trying to overemphasize perhaps the meter, but the meter is there. It enforces in the middle of change and constancy, disruption, anarchy, decay, disenchantment, there's still an order and an enchantment that is there in the very form of the first anniversary, which counterbalances the themes of loss, I think. Very difficult in our current culture of especially in the arts, where we've lost all sense of order and proportion, and more or less films and music, pop culture is just repeating stuff that, Marvel did. We're just regurgitating the same themes, the same characters. They can't come up with any new ideas. The arts have not made, it's not just, it's apparent regress. Plot lines, stories, there's nothing there. I think that comes from a loss of meaning and purpose. It's just a money-making exercise. So very complex reflection on human experience. So it begins with, when that rich soul, which to her heaven is gone, whom all do celebrate, who know they have one. In other words, all Christians. Note that the soul goes, it doesn't go in the sense of, although he's playing on this in a Platonic sense. This is a Neoplatonic allusion here. He's not actually so strongly wedded to this that he's actually a heretic, because the idea that the mind and the body are two separate things, and the body is the prison house for the soul, and now the soul is free and it gets freed from the jail and goes to heaven, that's heretical thinking. But that's how he presents it, because it's a fit image for something that goes up, and we still appeal to that when we think of these things as well. So when that rich soul, which to her heaven is gone, because Elizabeth Drury was a believer, whom all do celebrate, who know they have one. So people are at Elizabeth Drury's funeral, they're giving praise to God that she's now with her Lord. Those that know that they have a soul are delighted that Elizabeth Drury is now in a place where there's no more death or dying or tears or so forth, right? So that's what he means at the outset. For who is sure he hath a soul unless it see and judge and follow worthiness, and by deeds praise it? He who doth not this may lodge an inmate soul, but 'tis not his. So the soul that you have, if you don't acknowledge the vocation that Elizabeth Drury had to be with her Lord, if you don't acknowledge this, that although you have a soul, it's an inmate in you, and it's not really your soul at all. It's captive to the devil. The purpose of your soul is not even known to you. Now he refers to her not to a soul, but that queen. When that queen here, she's not a queen, Elizabeth Drury, by the way, in life, but he's comparing her. When that queen entered her progress time, and as her standing house to heaven did climb, where loath to make the saints attend her long, she's now a part both of the choir and song. This world in that great earthquake languished, for in a common bath of tears it bled, which drew the strongest vital spirits out, but succored then with a perplexed doubt whether the world did lose or gain in this. So here's the sense at any Christian funeral. A great soul has passed from our midst. We no longer are the beneficiary of this woman's life. We no longer will have her guidance. We will no longer have her cheerfulness, her compassion, her companionship, her whatever. So we have lost a great thing, but she's gained a great thing. What do I do here? Do I lament or do I give praise? I think you're torn. And that's reflected in the poem. Very emotionally honest in that sense. That's why I say I don't like the celebrations of life. We mustn't be sorry. Come on, don't tell me how to feel. Whether we have this perplexed out whether the world did lose or gain in this. Because since now no other way there is, but goodness to see her, whom all would see, all must endeavor to be as good as she. This great consumption to a fever turn. So now he goes from Elizabeth Drury's fate. Well, she's gone to God, she's with the heavenly choir, and she's met her great reward. But we're left in this world of doubt, and there's consequences to her loss. The world's a worse place from that vantage point. And this great consumption to a fever turn. And so the world had fits. So the world is like having convulsions and earthquakes, just like her body did when she was in a fever. Sometimes people will actually, when they have a high fever, they'll actually get the shakes. I don't know if you've ever been or seen that, and you lose control of your body in many ways. And that's how she was, but now the world is that way. So again, the constant microcosm, macrocosm analogy, which Donne so loves. So thou sick world mistakes thyself to be. When alas thou art in a lethargy, her death did wound and tame thee then, and then thou mightst have spared the son or man. So it begins with, by setting the tone for the rest of the poem. So it's the 1 year's time from when we lost the beloved Elizabeth Drury. He wants to commemorate the occasion. Notes that time hasn't lessened the grief. Time heals all wounds. Well, it might, but it doesn't do it quickly. He still feels the loss. A year on from somebody important's death, it's very fresh. And when the anniversary comes, it comes with the vividness of the immediate loss. Time reminds you in that sense. Anniversary suggests a celebration. The tone is not celebratory. So great irony and paradox in this. Sad joys, mournful mirth are words that he uses right here to show the paradox or the that is felt here. So it's very meditative. It's clearly overly intellectual. And this is characteristic, I think, of the 17th century as well, especially the metaphysical poets. They're overly intellectual. They intellectualize everything. Some people like, some people hate. I like it. But it's complicated. So then it moves to her death did wound and tame thee then, and then thou mightst have spared the son or man. So it's a reflection on what happens as a consequence of this. So then the theme of time and the fleeting nature of life will be explored. Time is always moving forward. Note that we talk about the progress of time, and we have a sense that it's moving towards something then, that's what progress entails. It's moving towards something, and the something towards which it's moving, as Christians, we will think of the new heaven and the new earth, but the death that comes seems like a regression rather than a progression. So again, that sense of paradox, which is part of life. We're told that we're moving towards the eschaton, the new heavens and the new earth, when Christ will come a second time, and the consequences of sin and death will be removed. That's good. That's something to look forward to, but life is marked by death. Births and deaths. They're commemorated memories. And deaths are actually, in some ways, deeper. They hit harder. So there's this bitterness and sweetness, because again, the sweetness is a believer. The believer is now in heaven. That's wonderful. But for me, it's just bitter. It's only bitter. So you have to be less selfish in that sense. Easier said than done. So deep woundedness, and that's the reflection here. He introduces the idea of the sun rising in the east, which symbolizes the beginning of a new day, the passage of time, and the idea of time moving towards a goal, specific goal, and the sense of time having, as I say, it's like a pilgrimage. The idea of life as a pilgrimage is a Christian concept. We know that, but I don't think we're aware of quite how unique that view is in comparison to world religions, pagan or present. The idea that you're going towards something on a journey. Talk about people euphemistically or just as a figure of speech say, well, we're all on a journey. Even pagans, our contemporaries, talk about, I'm on a journey. This is part of my life's journey. Well, what makes you think you're on a journey anywhere? What makes you think you're not wandering in circles? Why do you think you're moving at all? I mean, one day's like the next. You get up, except you're getting older, but what makes you think you're going towards something? Because at the end of the day, if you're not Christian, you will say that it's not, there's nothing that comes afterwards. Well, why then did you live your life as if you were going towards something and use that metaphor? You have a curriculum vitae. You know what a curriculum is? It's the journey of your race. Cursus is you're running. Your life's run. That's what a curriculum vitae is, your CV. This is how my race was run. That's what you put down on a piece of paper. You're running towards something. That's what the CV suggests. And you should be able to mark progress. And in school, you go through grades where you're climbing upwards. That's what a grade, you go up the step. A gradus is a step. You go up the ladder and you graduate. You're continuing to go onward and upward towards something. We can't get rid of that. I think that's so strongly embedded in our culture that we can't lose it. And that's there. So, as in states doubtful of future errors, when sickness without remedy impairs the present prince, they are loath it should be said the prince doth languish or the prince is dead. So mankind feeling now a general thaw, a strong example gone, equal to law, the cement which did faithfully compact and glue all virtues, now resolved and slacked, thought it some blasphemy to say she was dead, or that our weakness was discovered in that confession. Therefore spoke no more than tongues, the soul being gone, the loss deplore. So he moves from the loss of Elizabeth Drury to the sense of the world. So he goes from time to the world. And those two poles between world and time, we're going to find those recur on this course. This is very much of a philosophical age, and they have a strong view of heaven in this era, but also a strong sense of the importance of time and the purpose of the world. And there's a sanctified purpose to it, which theologians in our day are very commonly noting we have lost. We live in a desanctified world. And one contemporary theologian is even talking about the desecration of mankind, which I happen to agree with. We've not only desacralized the world, we have desanctified life. Christians will talk about the sanctity of life. The culture is moving to desanctify life. Not only is there no heaven, there's no sanctity anywhere. But that's not Donne's. Donne is not living in such an age where people truly believe that there's no sanctity. They just feel the sense of loss from someone so good. But though it be too late to succor the sick world. So he moves immediately from Elizabeth Drury to the world. She was sick, she died. You're sick, world, and yet what awaits you? Yea, dead, yea, putrefied, since she, the intrinsic balm and thy preservative, can never be renewed. Thou never live. I, since no man can make thee live, will try what we may gain by thy anatomy. Okay, so he announces what he's going to do, which is to dissect the world and look what he can do to try and bring healing to the world. Because he can't bring life to it. The only one who brings life is a woman. Eve, the mother of all living. The man can't do that. He can just cut it apart to try and rectify it. And where did I look? Let no man say the world itself being dead, 'tis labor lost to have discovered the world's infirmities, since there is none alive to study this dissection. For there's a kind of world remaining still. So the world's dead, but there is a kind of world. What is the kind of world? Though she which did inanimate and fill the world be gone, yet in this last long night her ghost doth walk. That is a glimmering light, a faint, weak love of virtue and of good. So how do we understand this world but live it by looking at virtue and life in accordance with? That's what Bacon suggested in his glance as well, which men without chests disregard entirely. So the matter and stuff of this, her virtue, and the form our practice is. So let's, in order to commemorate the loss of Elizabeth Drury and the meaning and honor the woman, let's look at what was quintessential about Elizabeth Drury, namely her virtue. And that will be the way in which we seek to fix or heal the ills of the world. And though to be thus elemented, arm these creatures from home-born intrinsic harm. For all assumed unto this dignity, so many weedless paradises be, which of themselves produce. So Elizabeth Drury is, it's almost blasphemously, she's being presented as the savior. She's being praised. I mean, Donne does not mean this literally, but he's, and this is typical of a eulogy, is to, you don't reflect on the person's weaknesses, or particularly not their sinfulness in a eulogy. You speak of their best side, but he's taking that to a different degree altogether by making her to be someone who can bring about the healing of the world through her life of virtue. So she represents all these things. So yeah. Because outward storms the strongest break, and strength itself by confidence grows weak. How about that? What a line. This new world may be safer. If you trust in your strength, you're weak. If you trust in your weakness, you're strong. It's a very Christian emphasis, right? This new world may be safer, being told the dangers and diseases of the old. And for with due temper, men do then forego or covet things when they their true worth know. So if we know that our true worth is nothing, then we can appeal to him who died for sinners. There is no health, physicians say, that we at best enjoy but a neutrality. Very much of a topic of our day, sickness and health. The healthcare industry, you have to understand what life is, and you have to understand what health is in order to be a physician. If you don't know what the definition of person is and what health is, then how can you act to help a person? The medical profession has to answer that question. It's a philosophical question. It's also a psychological question. It's also a spiritual question, because people are not just they don't just suffer physical illnesses, they suffer mental illnesses and spiritual maladies, and they all intertwine. At best, we can enjoy but a neutrality, because there's no perfect health in this world. Can there be worse sickness than to know that we are never well, nor can be so? We are born ruinous, appealing to the doctrine of original sin here. Poor mothers cry that children come not right nor orderly. Every mother knows this. The child, there's something wrong with the child. Might be physical, might be spiritual, might be what it's. I didn't do anything, just is that way. We are those people, by the way. It's not just the children. There's something twisted about everyone. Children come not right nor orderly, except they headlong come and fall upon an ominous precipitation. How witty's ruin, how importunate upon mankind. It labored to frustrate even God's purpose, and made woman sent for man's relief cause of his languishment. So here's the irony of human life. Human beings are this paradoxical creature that wants good and works evil, invites evil. Woman, who's supposed to be the balm of Adam, ends up bringing about his ruin. And that's all part of God's plan. Man is very happy to be complicit in his own ruin and agree to it. They were two good ends, and they are so still, but accessory in principle and ill. For that first marriage was our funeral. One woman at one blow then killed us all, and singly one by one they kill us now. A little tongue-in-cheek on Donne's part. We do delightfully ourselves allow to that consumption. Fornication. We delight in that particular form of consumption. And profusely blind, we kill ourselves to propagate our kind. And yet we do not that. We are not men. There is not now that mankind which was that. So a sense of, with the progress of time, a sense of degeneration. So Donne has something here that we certainly don't hear anymore after the 18th century. The idea that mankind is getting worse and worse over the course of time, not better and better. And the myth of the age of progress is that mankind is improving. Life is getting better. People are living longer. They're healthier. They're better. Donne does not say that. He says the exact opposite. We don't live 800 years, and humanity seems to be getting worse rather than better. To this day, you will find some who will claim the opposite. Steven Pinker at Harvard, or at I think it's Harvard University, talks about measures of, the world's better because of the age of reason, progress, and so forth. And by some measures, that there's some proof for that, and by other measures, I would say there's a proof for the exact opposite. At any rate, so 200, 300 years, nobody lives that long now. And Methuselah, I already mentioned that when I was going through this. So he reflects on the transience of human life, and goes on to talk about kings. And let me spend my concluding. I want to talk about, where is this? This here. This phrase here. This is 1611. Galileo, contemporaneously with this, is scanning the heavens and sees that there are 4 moons around Jupiter, which you can't see with the naked eye, but you can see with a telescope. Remember, they lived in an age when the cosmology of the world had everything revolving around the Earth. The Earth is fixed at the center and everything else revolves around it. But now we see that Jupiter, which is way out here and is moving in the crystalline spheres, actually has things revolving around Jupiter and not around the Earth. So it already breaks with that model. Furthermore, they spot novas in the sky, what we call something novel, something new. There's not supposed to be anything new in the old cosmology because everything is eternal and perfect and reflecting on the heavenly perfection connected to number and space and time, which you can measure in the quadrivium, geometry, mathematics, astronomy, and music. These are all interconnected. But if we start to question that, then there are political and social consequences. So there are the consequences to a breach in physics and metaphysics and cosmology is political and social. And this is what he reflects on in these famous lines. A new philosophy calls all in doubt. The element of fire is quite put out. So let me put the cosmology up here and you'll get a sense of this. I'll show you one that shows the Petal. Boy, there's a lot, eh? Yeah, it's kind of interesting. That's not what I'm after. There's so many out there. Oh, this one's really interesting. Oh, I can't. It doesn't show up enough. What about this one? Oops. So the symbol of perfection, the earth here, and outside, so the earth is composed of earth, air, fire, and water, and then outside of this, ether. But around the earth, there's supposed to be a fire. So the four elements there on earth and everything in it is a microcosm of that greater macrocosm. And there's an element of the spirit in humanity, which is also reflective of the spirit out here, which is eternal. So the correspondence, remember I talked about the different types of music. The music of the cosmos is also the music of the human breast. The reason we gravitate and enjoy music is because there's something spiritual in us, which is eternal. That fits with the spiritual nature of the music of the spheres. And we can play instrumental music which will correspond to that, and it happens to be mathematically precise, ordered in terms of a musical scale, and create harmony out of that, and all, etc. New philosophy calls all that in doubt. The element of fire is quite put out. The sun is lost. Why is the sun lost? Well, the sun is here. It used to be, well, I'm here on the earth. The sun comes by and it goes there, and then it disappears when it goes beyond that. And we call it a sunrise and a sunset. Okay, well, that's when the sun is moving. But what if, in the new new explanation of astronomy, we posit that the sun is at the center of what we call now the solar system, and the earth is moving? Because that's what's being proposed to explain. The sun is at the center, the earth is moving around the sun in our solar system, and it's no longer concentric perfect spheres, it's like a parabola. We don't even know where the earth is or how it relates to the sun anymore at all. It's not a fixed matter of certitude anymore. And he's reflecting on the consequences of this. The sun is lost and the earth, and no man's wit can well direct him where to look for it. Wit here is knowledge. It's not just to be witty as in funny, but it's no advanced knowledge knows how to place the world in relation to the sun now, even though these are basic matters of astronomy, which are connected to music, which are connected to arithmetic, which are connected to geometry. And all these things go with it then, because they're interconnected. And freely men confess that this world spent. Well, he's just talked about this in relation to Elizabeth Drury. She's the world that's died. When in the planets in the firmament they seek so many new, they see that this world is crumbled out again to as atom is. Just like the anatomy, everything's been cut up into little pieces. All we have left is atoms. 'Tis all in pieces, all coherence gone, all just supply and all relation. Prince, subject, father, son. These are relational terms. Are things forgot. For every man alone thinks he hath got to be a phoenix, and that then can be none of that kind of which he is but he. Wisdom for man's self. Right contemporaneous with this. Right? That same mindset. This is the world's condition now. And now, she that should all parts to reunion bow, she that had all magnetic force alone, just like a magnet pulls the iron filings around it, to draw and fasten sundered parts in one, she whom wise nature had invented then, when she observed that every sort of men did in their voyage in this world's sea stray and needed a new compass for their way, because that's how they navigate. They have a compass that tells them which way to go, and you better do it exactly by degree, because if you go over 100 miles and if you're not bang on, you're going to end up over here and you're going to miss, you're not going to end up where you want to go. Needed a new compass for the way. She that was the best and first original of all fair copies, and the general steward of fate, she whose rich eyes and breast gilt the West Indies and perfumed the East, etc. That's all gone. She to whom this world must itself refer as suburbs or the microcosm of her, she is dead. She's dead. When thou knowest this, thou knowest how lame and crippled this world is. So this is the reflection on the death of Elizabeth Drury, called the first anniversary. It's not just about Elizabeth Drury. It's about human life. It's about mortality. It's about the meaning of life. It's about the scientific discoveries of his day and the consequences for them. Broader reflection. That reflection on it will not go away. It will get intensified as the century progresses. When René Descartes will write his first philosophy, the new philosophy, which he refers to here in 1611, is not a reference to Descartes, because Descartes doesn't write his work until the 1640. It's 30 years later. But he will be so moved by the method of doubt that he will propose that and reflect on the loss of cosmology, that I need a fixed point around which to revolve the world. And what's the fixed point? Himself. I've been brought to doubt everything, except the fact that I'm doubting. And if I'm doubting, that means I'm thinking. And if I'm thinking, it must mean I exist. And from that principle of certitude that I exist, I can further imagine that God exists, a greater being than I exist. And so the whole cosmos gets flipped around and revolving around the very thing that Francis Bacon says is a source of very foolish wisdom. Self-centeredness. Anyway, this will be something we'll reflect on over the course of the semester, looking at the course. Any questions about this? I realize it's very difficult work.
Not really a question. But
Okay, or a comment, sure.
I just thought it was I think it was very cool. I was this very beautiful way to describe grief, and you don't see that a lot. Even if you read modern poetry, it lacks a lot of times.
There's loss and no consolation in modern. When grief is expressed, which it is up until recently. Now we don't even want to talk about that. We have celebrations of life. We don't even think about death. It didn't happen unless somebody loses a dog, in which case broken. You can talk about it, go on about that. But if a person dies, we can't talk about that. We just celebrate and we carry on acting. They lack the register of language or sentiment and thought to reflect on the terrible paradox of life, that we're running towards death, and death seems to be running towards us. We want it many ways that we can die. And we even seem inclined to them because sin leads to death and we love sinning. And at the same time, we long for redemption from that. So that tension that exists within us lacks adequate expression now. We just don't have, it's not expressed. And I think people are desperate for it. Because the current way of looking at it is fraudulent and superficial and unhelpful. And drugs don't fix it. You can't dull the pain enough. And all manners of ways of trying to fill that void, which God sets in our hearts. He sets eternity in our hearts. And we try to find alternatives. No discussion of that. Very little discussion. And there are lots of spirituality in our day, but it tends to be very much of the wisdom for a person. Self.
Idea, so you can
Look within yourself. Yeah, look within yourself. I always go on about the orphan paradigm in 19th century Homer's. Yeah, look within yourself. You find your own journey. You've got to discover it for yourself. Nobody can tell you. You can't look at your parents because you're an orphan. Be like the orphan that you see represented in your literature. Be that person. Whether you're an orphan or not, think like an orphan, and then you will be yourself. And you can't be false to yourself because you've defined yourself. It's a very hollow way of living, and I do think it intensifies the problem of that Mr. Bacon refers to here as a wisdom, and it's one that preys upon the public good as well, which everybody laments, and few seem to be seeking to rectify because they don't have the big picture, which Donne is talking about in The Anatomy of the World. Yeah, thank you. Any final comments, and if not, we'll call it to a close for today. No? Okay. All right. Well, so next